Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. During the 15th annual GearFest celebration here at Sweetwater, Nick DiVirgilio had a chance to sit down with Modern Drummer magazine's #1 rock drummer Todd Sucherman for a wide-ranging interview about his technique, his drums, and lots more. Check this out.
How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here, GearFest 2016. I have a very special guest with me hanging right now, Mr. Todd Sucherman.
Hi,
Sucherman.
Nick.
Sook like book.
Sook like book.
How you doing,
You
man?
got
Great
it.
to have you here.
Thank
It's a real
you.
pleasure. I'm a huge fan of your drumming.
Likewise.
And it's just really nice to have a chance to talk to you. So welcome. First time to Sweetwater, yeah?
Yes, I've been knocked out with the place. It's absolutely amazing. I've been having a great day.
We just saw you do a little bit of a clinic, a little performance, and you were just killing it in there.
That's why I'm all unkempt right now. So
But
I just
you look
played.
fabulous. You look fabulous, really. Now, you're touring with STYX now. We'll get into all the details of all that kind of stuff. But how many clinics and performances like that do you do in between while you're on the road touring?
It's hard to sometimes work it out and do it while I'm on the road. I would say most of the clinics I do in a year, probably 90% will be sort of one-offs.
Okay.
But every now and then something will, serendipitously, we were playing in town tonight.
Right.
So this just worked out magically, and it's wonderful when that sort of
Sure.
happens. But on a good year, I might do, between clinics and festivals, 15, 20.
Okay.
But it's hard. I have to turn down, sadly, most of the things I'm asked to do because we're always working.
Sure. Now, you've been with STYX for how many years now?
Touring 20 years. as of
20
this
years.
year.
And you guys are still doing how many gigs a year? You still tour quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah, we average about 110 days a year.
So that's a good amount.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
enough.
That's good. And you're still having fun, obviously. Right? And that band you guys are sounding as good as ever, really.
Well, everyone takes care of themselves and they love playing and performing. And, these guys, some of them are 20 years my senior, and they just leave it on the stage every night. So that's inspiring for me, to be back there behind these guys. Like they never phone it in. They never, and it doesn't matter if we're in a field in Nebraska or playing New York City. It's the same energy. So that's very inspiring for me to be part of that machine.
Sure. Very cool. Let's take a quick step back and give a little history, because our viewers, we're an up-and-coming drum retailer. I mean, we've been selling drums for a long time, but now the drum business is really starting to take off, and more people are coming to check out what we're doing here. So maybe some of the people who are watching this interview might not know you or know your history. So why don't we, you've been playing drums since you were pretty much, you could barely even walk, correctly?
Yeah, my father was a drummer. He was 50 when I was born, so he was playing in the big band era. He put himself through med school playing drums.
That's
so
amazing.
he had offers to tour all the time and could only do little bits. He was Lena Horne's drummer for a bit.
Wow.
He was one of the house drummers at the Chez Paris in Chicago, which is like the Cotton Club of
Sure.
Chicago, for 18 years. So he had a whole life and a career before he met my mother. So I grew up with drums in the house, and I grew up the youngest in a musical family.
Right.
It was a wonderful card to be dealt with, dealt in life, to just have this wonderful, supportive, talented musical family, and to be the baby and just sort of,
Yeah.
my oldest brother played keyboards, the middle played bass, so it made sense that I round out the rhythm section. So it was a great way to, we'd play ball in the yard and then go in and play music. It's a
That's
great way to
awesome.
grow up.
And you've been gigging since you were really young too, right? I mean, you learned it from an early age.
Yeah, well, being that my brothers were 5 and 7 years older, respectively, they met older musicians. And when they were in high school, they were playing with college guys, and so they would pull me into the situations.
Right.
So I was always playing with older musicians, and it's still the case right now in STYX.
Yeah.
I'm always the baby in the situation for the most part. But it's all I ever wanted to do. I never wanted to be an astronaut or a fireman or whatever. Like I just knew that I was in love with the drums. I was in love with music, and it's just what I've dedicated my life to do. You know?
I think we're all glad that you did, for
Well,
sure.
Thanks, man.
So what influenced you musically? Obviously, your older brothers. What kind of music were you guys playing? I mean, the popular music of the day?
Yes, but because my father was 50 when I was born. My mother was 30. Like there was this mix of things. My dad was a jazzer, so
Right.
Like big band was really his thing. I mean, Buddy Rich, kind of bassy band.
Right.
My mother came home with Chicago 2 when I was a baby, and that changed my life. And Danny Serafin was one of my first drum heroes. I used to sit with my Mickey Mouse record player, like in diapers, as a young toddler, playing that record over and over and over again. and the music of the day, whatever was happening. You know, Led Zeppelin could be coming out of one room, Mozart out of another. You know, it was a cool way to grow up, and it was just music. It didn't seem to be so compartmentalized or, you know, we got to clarify this genre. It was just music.
Sure.
So yeah, it was everything. And growing up in the radio in the 1970s.
Which was just such a great era of music. Still one of my favorite decades of music is the 70s, personally. So as a player, were you taught at all? I mean, reading, technique, these kinds of things. How did you kind of develop that as you were going?
Yeah, my father understood the importance of being an educated musician and being able to read, that your chances of employment is exponentially greater if you can be, you know, a schooled musician. And also being versatile was another thing. So being, again, that my brother sort of paved the way for me, I started in the junior high school band, the jazz band and orchestra and symphonic band when I was in first grade. So I have the dubious honor of spending 8 years in the junior high school band, a record unbroken in Lincolnwood School District 74. But that was a great education and a great head start going into high school where we had a killer marching program, a jazz band program. You know, everything is a very serious arts set up in the school. And, you know, the whole time gigging, but I didn't really take any private instructions from anyone on the drum set until I went to Berkeley for 1 year. And I also studied with Gary Chafee privately for about 8 months.
That's cool.
So that was great. I mean, you know, pretty much went to Berkeley for a year, ran out of money, came back to Chicago, and then started phoning all the musicians that I knew, trying to embark upon a career as a drummer, you know, and a career in music.
And you got to do a bunch of stuff when you got back to Chicago after Berkeley. You dove into the studio scene there, right, and just started doing jingles and all kinds of different things. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your career?
Yeah, I mean, basically I started working with enough musicians that it finally led to, you know, sort of the upper crust guys that were doing recording sessions. And again, with versatility, I knew that if I could play all sorts of different styles, that I was on time, always. I was reliable, I was prepared, I had the right gear, I had the right tools for the job.
Everybody hearing this? This is good education right here.
Nail the gig, and then leave everybody happy that you were there. Yeah. Like, I knew that if you do that enough times with enough people, you'll end up in a room with Sting, you know, and that's how it happens. People say, how do you get gigs? Well, do all the gigs you can. Always be early, be on time, be prepared, have the right, you know, the right gear. Leave everyone happy that you were there. Most musicians don't put those different notions together and execute them regularly as the way they handle their business.
Right.
Those that do excel. Those that don't, those that are late, those that are unprepared, with the guise of, oh man, I'm so busy, you know, I'm so busy, I didn't have time to learn your stuff, even though I said yes to your gig. Right. That type of stuff, you see those guys, they always hang at a certain level, and they never get above that. So that was sort of how I handled my business.
Very nice. And through that, the STYX gig kind of came through this whole process of meeting people and just gigging. And
Nick, that's precisely how it happened, because the guy that was handling my cardage for studio sessions in Chicago, he had worked with the band and a couple of the guys in their solo projects in the past. And in 1995, when John Panazzo was in ill health and couldn't play the drums, they wanted to get together and re-record Lady for the Greatest Hits package, because it was on a different record label. Okay. They wanted to have everything on A&M. And they called him and said, who should we get to play? And he said, oh, call Todd Sucherman. He's doing all the sessions in town, and you know, he loves you guys. He grew up, you know, he saw you guys when, you know, he was a kid. So that was the inroads. You know, there wasn't like a big audition or a cattle call, or like I knew someone's cousin, and you know, it was the culmination of every gig that I ever did to get to that point where I knew people who knew people. Yep. And it was a recommendation, and then I had to go in there and not be a weirdo, or you know, and get the gig ultimately.
That's how I got most of my gigs in my life too. Yeah,
that's how it normally happens.
How it works. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a different turn now. Let's get into the gear that you play. You play pearl drums. Let me know if I miss anything. Sabian cymbals, Remo heads, ProMark sticks. You have your own signature stick.
Yes.
And if I missed anything, let me know.
Audax Microphones.
Audax Microphones, all killer stuff. So we're doing really well with pearl, and before I came here, I didn't know too much. I mean, I obviously knew the name of Pearl, but I didn't have a chance to play much of the gear. And I'm really starting to get a love for the Pearl drums. They make some really fantastic instruments. Now, you have a Masterworks set that you play with STYX. Is that the drums you use most of the time, even when you're not with STYX, or do you?
Yeah, I normally play Masterworks, with STYX, and I have Masterworks drums at home in my studio. That's the main studio kit that I use.
Okay.
And there's, I have a couple different Masterworks kits, some with different configurations and different bearing edge cuts. But the kit that I've had out on the road since 2013, they're all like 8-ply to 10-ply from the 14 on down. Babinga with a walnut burst, and Babinga on the inside of the drums. I like the inside of the shell to match the outside.
Sure.
It's a little thing I have. And it's this particular kit, I believe, is the only kit that's ever been outfitted in all rose gold hardware.
It's really pretty drum set.
So, yeah, it's kind of breathtaking. Pictures don't do it justice. When people see it up close, you can hear the.
Nice. Now, you have huge is relative. I mean, you have a big drum setup, right? Lots of drums in front of you. It's got to be fun to have all those sounds in front of you just to touch and to play.
It is, but if you were to get behind the kit, you'd realize how compact it is, because the 4 rack toms in front are actually 6, 8, 10, 12. So I can get a lot of drums in a short span,
right,
where I don't feel like it's one of these, So it's kind of like a cozy cockpit. It looks big from out front, but when you get behind, you're like, oh, this makes sense. Everything's kind of in right here.
And now, this is going to be a weird question. Do you use both kick drums? Because there's a lot of guys who put 2 bass drums up there and use a double pedal. So you do use both kick drums.
Yes.
Now, when you go from, like, you're in your clinic today, you had a double pedal, not the 2 kick drums. So what is the big difference between having the 2? I mean, is it a huge different feel for you to go from a pedal to an actual drum?
If I were to be entirely honest with you, I'm actually more comfortable on a double pedal, simply because I spent more years of my life that way. I mean, if I had to carry them, I'd never have 2 bass drums. But one of the reasons I have 2 bass drums is A, I don't have to carry them, and B, it makes my drum set normally bigger than any other band that we're on the bill with. Okay. So,
hey,
and 3, I don't have to carry them. But yeah, it's a great feel. But I'm comfortable either way.
Either way, cool.
Yeah.
All right. And you play Sabian cymbals, like we said, killer stuff. I got the chance to go to the factory recently.
I've never been.
Really?
I've never been. No one's invited me.
Well, you got to text back Bob Rupp right now and say what's going on.
He knows.
It's quite a facility there. I mean, you would never expect that there's a cymbal factory on the lake in Canada. It's a beautiful place, and the people that are making cymbals there are artisans. They really are. I mean, they've been doing it guys have been hammering cymbals for 40 years, king every day. So how do you like your Sabian cymbals? Do you use a lot of AAX in your setup?
I use AAX crashes, the vault crashes with STYX, because I find that they're strong, powerful, but they're musical. They have a really lovely cut, a musical cut, and a great tone and a great feel. They're just hard enough, but just still buttery enough that I feel like I'm not hitting a slab of metal, know. And I've just recently, I've sort of fallen in love with the bigger crashes. I used to have, my crashes used to go 17, 19, 18, 20, and now I'm 18, 19, 20, 22.
Wow.
And I'm loving them. I'm loving them. And I also had them make 20 and 22 legacy crashes for me that just record so beautifully. They're just smoky butter, and they just have a great hand, when you hit them. Just the bend, it just feels great.
It's important to have the cymbal do that, isn't it? When you crash into it, you want it to kind of give and give back at you. It's
one thing that I really dig about Sabian is, like, you don't have to be on their stable of stars to get custom things. They'll make the customer whatever you want. So if you want a 22-inch legacy crash like I have, they'll make it. You want 24-inch hi-hats, they'll make it. And I think that's really cool as a company that they will do that for the consumer.
And the vault there, if you do get a chance to go to the factory, the vault there is pretty ridiculous.
I'm sure.
I could have spent hours just kind of looking through and playing everything in that room. It's a ton of stuff.
I know there's all these like weird prototypes. You're like, what's this?
One-offs and all kinds of stuff.
Well, that's how I found my ride cymbal. I use it on almost everything I do that's non-STYX. With STYX, it's a little light for the band, for touring. But I used it on the new record, actually. It just happened to be a prototype that was in LA. And so, can I play that one? Can I have this one? And that's been like my main ride that I've used for over 10 years now.
Wow.
Outside of the band.
Very cool. And what kind of heads are you? I mean, Remo, of course, but what type?
Man, my flavor has always been clear ambassadors, tops and bottoms.
Regular single ply, yeah.
To me, that's just the sound that I want. It's it's a nice attack, but a strong fundamental tone that rings and has a nice like aquatic belly flop, on the floor toms. Coated ambassador on the snare,
okay.
Power stroke 3 clear on the bass drum, and that's just been my flavor. That's been unchanged for since the 80s,
okay.
easily.
Nice. And tell us about your signature stick. Roughly what size is it?
What makes the stick unique for starters is that it's made out of maple.
Okay.
And most sticks are hickory or oak. So maple is a lighter, less dense wood, so I can get a really thick 0.600 girth size. So it's like a chunky 5B.
Right.
But there's weight shaved right before the acorn bead, so I can still hold the sticks pretty far back and get a really nice rebound.
Okay.
The balance point it's not so far up.
Right.
So because they're thick and they're light, I play them. I don't feel like they're playing me. Like when you're like sitting and you're air drumming something, trying to work something out. That's the way they feel in my hands. They kind of they're light, but because they're chunky, because of the maple, they're filling out my hand.
Right.
So that's just a combination that I really dig. So it's a fairly unique stick.
Very cool. And it's something that people can purchase, right? I mean,
people can purchase. Hopefully, right here at Sweetwater.
I'm sure they can. I'm sure they can. And finally, Audax Microphones. How long have you been playing with Audax mics?
Man, I've been in Audax. I think I went with them around 2008. I did a session in 2007, and the engineer put a microphone on the snare drum that wasn't 57. And I said, whoa, what are you doing? And I was sort of producing the session.
Right.
And he goes, dude, you got to check out this mic. And I said, well, okay. He goes, tell you what, if you don't dig this mic, I'll swap it out. 10 tracks on that record, 10 different snare drums. That was the microphone. Same thing with the D2s and the D4s.
Yeah.
And at the same time, another drummer buddy of mine just flipped out over some Audax. And he actually went down and bought them. And he doesn't open his wallet for much at all. So I knew that, if he digs them in his own studio. And I fell in love with them.
Sure.
And to me, one of the all-stars are the STYX 25A overheads, the little kind of gold lollipops.
Yeah.
They sound so creamy and natural. I can hear what cymbal is which when I hit it. And I had the experience about maybe 3 years ago. I saw Peter Gabriel in Toronto at the Air Canada Centre. And in the first song, I'm looking, like, the cymbals sound beautiful. What? Audax STYX 25As.
Okay.
How often do you go to an arena show and in the first song say, the cymbals sound beautiful? And I was like, I made the right call, yeah.
Nice, very good. All right, thank you for all that info. Very cool. A lot of great information there. Before we close off this video, let's talk about a couple more things. You're an educator as well. You've had a couple of, how many DVDs do you have now?
There's Methods Mechanics and Methods and Mechanics 2. So there's 2 double disc DVDs.
And those are both, I got a ton of information on from both of those discs.
You.
So much stuff. Really inspiring to watch. So are you working on anything else now? A 3 or something else maybe as an educator?
No, I might be doing some online stuff in the future, but I'm out with the band so much that it's hard to do everything that I'm asked to do or would like to do. And life, I got a 2-year-old daughter, so life sort of creeps in the way of, some things I might want to do.
Now those things, I know Benny Greb and Thomas Lang and a few other guys who make educational DVDs, Mike Portnoy, and yours is very produced. It's slick looking, it sounds great. So, that must have been a big project. Was it a big undertaking?
It really was, and Eric Doris, who I did both the DVDs with, I like to think at the time we sort of raised the production level, the bar of what was happening at the time. And I know I wanted to present material in a way, well, first off, that material that had never been presented before, and present it in a way that had never been presented, before. I watched a lot of DVDs, and I didn't want to cover things that had been covered ad nauseum that
Sure.
were, already existed as a product out there. So it was fun and creative for me to try and gather all this information that could be useful and helpful for a musician to be employable and to work in the music business, to help them be employable as a drummer, as opposed to just wowing people with, fireworks and
Sure.
antics and whatnot. So that was, I sort of wanted to be a galvanizing voice of reason at the time. That was the impetus for me doing it. I thought there was too much sensationalism on things that were nonsensical and that were going to steer the younger generation in the wrong direction.
Well, that's cool. Well, I highly recommend his DVDs. If you haven't seen them before, search them out because they are great educational tools.
Thank you.
They really, really are. And well, finally, so what are you listening to these days? What's inspiring you these days as far as music and/or drumming?
Right now, I'm working on this record for this Australian guitarist, Zan Nico, and the stuff's really hard. So I'm trying to memorize 3 incredibly difficult pieces of music that I have to record when I go home in 3 weeks.
Okay.
But Gavin Harrison turned me onto this cool band from England called Everything Everything.
Okay.
I've been digging them. I love like singer-songwriter stuff. Like David Mead, a guy out of Nashville, is just, his writing should be in his pantheon with the greats. And I like sort of putting my iPod on shuffle and
Seeing what comes up.
what surprises me. And then sometimes like, I didn't know I had this, or what's this? Or I haven't heard that in a long time.
Right.
And like, look, Genesis is one of my biggest influences, and I love going back and going through the catalog.
Sure.
Nice.
Well, Todd, thanks so much for coming to Sweetwater. Thanks for doing your clinic. Good luck on your show tonight. STYX is playing at the Follinger Theater here in Fort Wayne this evening. And have a great gig. Please come back and see us again.
Anytime. Thank you, brother.
All right. Our thanks to Todd and Nick for this great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.